I want to go across now to A.K. Bhattacharya. He's a senior journalist, editorial director at Business Standard. And Mr. Bhattacharya, several people of your generation would really have been at the peak of their prowess through the life and times of Dr. Manmohan Singh as RBI Governor, as Chief Economic Advisor, and in the Planning Commission, so many different capacities. And I think that's the point we were making with Sanjay Jha and Ashok Malik before you came, that people really base their impressions of Dr. Manmohan Singh around what happened in the last few years of UPA 2. But if you look at the larger life arc of the former Prime Minister, there are so many achievements which somehow got buried under a carpet because of all the policy paralysis that piled up towards the end of UPA 2.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you at all on this assessment because I think what happened in the second phase of his third tenure in government, I look at Dr. Manmohan Singh in his three avatars. The first avatar was as a technocrat, and the second avatar as the finance minister, and the third avatar as the prime minister. And I think what he achieved in his second avatar, which is the finance minister, is outstanding, and that is not often recognized. Of course, his reforms initiative from 1991 to 1996 were aided by a prime minister and a team, excellent team that he had at his disposal. So I think...
but you're saying he had a team at his disposal. Can I also just pipe in to say there are a lot of the people who worked with him at that time, the likes of Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Rakesh Mohan and several others, he actually encouraged them to give up the lucrative jobs they had and follow his path. So as a technocrat, he was a Pied Piper of sorts, inviting so many of those bright brains to come and work in the government system.
I mean, yes, of course. I think he was a gravitating kind of the magnet of sorts. He succeeded to build that team together. He understood the importance of getting technocrats around policy making. And I think when he became the prime minister, he did not enjoy that kind of the policy support, although his policy thrust changed. His policy thrust went more towards introducing rights-based policies, and thanks to the support he got from the Congress president. So his entire approach changed, and also India economically was doing much better at that time, at least from 2004 to 2010 or 11. So he could afford that luxury of introducing rights-based policies, introducing Aadhaar, introducing the right to work, right to information, right to education, right to food in 2013 even. So if you look at finance minister, he rescued the economy with the help of his team, and as the prime minister, he actually introduced certain guardrails which in many ways they actually helped you build the robust digital public infrastructure that you have today, of transferring benefits to the people, transferring, even the Narega that he introduced is useful, and particularly was more useful at the time when COVID struck us. So in that sense, Dr. Manmohan Singh's role as the finance minister is, to my mind, is even more important. As a prime minister, he carried on with that legacy, but it's a fact that in his second 5 years as a prime minister, he somehow lost that steam, in a sense that economic growth slightly slowed down, current account deficit worsened. So he was not in command of the situation in his second 5 years term as a prime minister. But I always feel that as a finance minister, he was at his best.
He was a finance minister par excellence. Make no mistake about it. Extremely erudite and knowledgeable about the intricacies of finance. And it's also, in some senses, Ashok Malik, possibly a lesson for all of us about knowing when to say enough is enough and when to walk away. Many reflecting on the career of Dr. Manmohan Singh say if he'd stopped after the 2009 victory, he would have really gone down as a hero in history even at that moment, taking the Congress to 206 and then walking away, because by then his health had started fading. Sonia Ji's health was fading as well. But that's also something which is very difficult to do. In hindsight, you can say all this, but if you just come back after everyone saying Singh is king, you won 206, you think, you had a role to play in the victory and therefore don't feel politically enfeebled.
One of the paradoxes of politics anywhere in the world is that people tend to take the eyes off the ball precisely at the moment of victory. The 206 seats which the Congress won in 2009 was a very robust victory. It was, it came on the back of 5 years of economic growth. Whether that had been the work of Dr. Singh and Mr. Vajpayee or both is another matter, but it came in a moment which was a happy moment for India. It came it was at least in urban India and semi-urban India, in part a vote of trust and confidence in Dr. Singh himself, because people saw him as a good man, working on the nuclear deal, trying to do good for India. And he had a role to play in winning that election, which frankly, I think his party did not give him sufficient credit for, because he was more of a vote winner, at least in urban India in that election, than we often concede. But what that required, and I guess as a personal individual, he may have wanted it that way, was to push ahead with economic change and economic reform to sustain the growth engine into the next decade. That did not happen. I think the Congress, again, I'm not trying to make this political, but perhaps once you come to power with that sort of a mandate, your opposition seems to be on the ropes. You think you're there for the next 10 years or longer. You don't focus as much on what needs to be done. And somewhere in that second term, the UPA government lost the plot and lost its way. There was this opportunity in 2012 when the presidency came up, when Pratibha Patil's term ended. There was talk of Dr. Manmohan Singh being elevated to the presidency. Many people have spoken about it. I think Manishankar Iyer recently mentioned it as well in an interview. It was a story back then. You can remember. And there was talk of either Pranab Mukherjee or Sheila Dikshit becoming the prime minister. Those are the what-ifs of history. And maybe if that had happened, 2014 would have gone another way.
Sure.
Maybe it wouldn't have gone another way, but that is life.
This is not a time to obsess over the what-ifs. This is a time to reflect on the life and times of Dr. Manmohan Singh, whose hearse has now reached the Nigambodh Ghat, situated on the banks of the river Yamuna in Old Delhi. One of the oldest cremation sites in the country, and also in particular the most important cremation site in the national capital.